Well, it's early spring here in Nova Scotia, but as I look around the woods, I don't think you'd know that. If it wasn't for the sun, the strength of it in the sky right now, I would still think it was midwinter. We have about 10-15 centimeters of snow on the ground. In the last week it's rained, it's frozen, it's snowed, freezing rain, more snow. Typical spring weather in Nova Scotia. But I thought if I don't get out today, I may not get out while the conditions are still somewhat similar to what they were the last time I was out with my Solo Titan and my Lixada wood gasification stoves. I wanted to revisit that test that I did some months ago on a very snowy morning in February to see if I can't improve upon the performance of the two stoves. So you may recall, if you've watched the earlier video, I was somewhat disappointed with the two stoves, especially the Lixada. The Solo Titan didn't do great, but it did better than the Lixada did. Well, I've had a number of comments from viewers on how I might do things differently, and in my own self-evaluation I realized I missed some good crucial opportunities to do a better job myself. So that's what I'm going to do today, as close as possible, redo the test that I did a little while ago and see if I can improve the performance of the two stoves. Stand by. Okay, a quick overview of my setup before I get the fires lit. So I'll show you what I've done differently from last time. So this time you'll see that I have a rock behind the stoves for a bit of a windbreak, and I've created a impromptu windbreak which is basically on the north side out of some sticks and snow. It rises above the level of the two stoves to block the wind as much as I can. And it is a stiff wind today too. The temperatures are hovering around 0 degrees Celsius, but we've got quite a stiff wind, so it's going to play havoc a little bit, probably with my film recording as well. Underneath the stoves I have two small logs, maple, hard, wood, dead, very dry maple. And those are there simply for the reason to lift the stoves off of the cold ground below it. And I did have to dig away snow just to get down to ground level. So I have a barrier between the snow and the cold ground and the stoves. And the other thing that I didn't do last time that I've done this time is I had made a small aluminum plate to go underneath the bottom of the Lixada stove. And it's there now just to sort of even up the playing field a little bit between the two stoves, because of course the Solo Titan has a built-in plate in the bottom of it. So I've preloaded the stoves for a top-down burn. They are small sticks, a mixture of small maple and small spruce sticks. One of the things that a viewer had mentioned, and they were correct of course, is that for gasification to be most effective, the burn has to occur just below the secondary ports, the jets at the top. Because the way the gasification works, it's not burning from the bottom up. It's carbonizing the top layer of fuel, whatever it might be, and the gases that are being released are what are burning on top. So in order to get this started, I'm going to do it the same way I did last time. A little bit of birch bark and some very, very fine pencil lead size pine twigs. So I'll get set up to start and we'll see what happens. The wind is playing a bit havoc. I have to see if I can do it right down here in this little bit of a pit that I have. That's better. Alright, a little bit of fine twigs. I recall now one of the troubles I had, or one of the challenges I had last time, was trying to manage two stoves at the same time. They can both be very demanding, and to get them both going, I have to be quite quick. Alright, game on, let's see what happens. So with no good reason, no explanation for it, the Lixada is burning much more efficiently than the Solo Titan. complete reversal of what we had happen last time. You can probably see gasification's even begun on some of the ports.
Hello. You're off the beaten path, boy. There he is.
Okay, so funny story. Actually, quite a nice story. I've had the video taped off for about 15 minutes, and in that time I've had to refill the stoves quite a few times. And the reason I turned it off is I had a couple of hikers come up on me in this rather remote area. It turned out to be a friend of mine that I hadn't seen since the Nova Scotia Bushcraft Gathering in August of 2016. So we took some time to catch up and talk about what was happening here and the next gathering. And so I had to stop a few times while we were talking and throw some sticks in, but I was able to make some observations, and it's pretty much what you're seeing right now. Both stoves are running pretty much evenly, and actually very well. And I suspect that the Solo stove still has a bit of an edge, although you don't see it right now when you see the two stoves running. And what I'm finding is trying to record both stoves at an even pace is a challenge, because I find I get one loaded up and it starts to run very well, and then the other one is burning down. I load it up and it starts to run well, so I can't get them at the same point. This points out to me again something I've mentioned many times, which is these smaller wood stoves, and especially the gasification stoves, because you're breaking up such small pieces of wood, they have to be tended quite closely. They are very hungry little animals, and they take a lot of small sticks to keep going effectively. But when they're going, they are very efficient. You can see right now the Lixada stove, the further one away, is burning very efficiently. It's gasifying very well, and I would say they're both functioning much better, and I attribute that to the things I mentioned earlier, which is putting them up off of the ground on some dry wood, making sure there was a bit of a something underneath the Lixada stove to further protect it from the cold, giving it a windbreak. Whether I start with a top-down feed or start a little fire in the bottom and feed it from there, ultimately they're all going to burn down. I know that people with the top-down feed who believe in top-down feed say load it once and you never have to load it again. I haven't found that to be true. Maybe some more experience with the stoves will prove that to be true, but for now I'm finding that both stoves work very well, and I could highly recommend or evenly recommend either stove, with a slight advantage going to the Solo stove. But then again, if you're buying it brand new, you're paying easily 5 times the price of the Lixada stove. Well, what have I learned from this episode working with the two gasification stoves? Well, there is some rules, or not so much rules, there's some guidelines that will help you get the most out of the stoves. And if you're going to be working in cold weather like I am here, not extremely cold, again it's hovering right around 0, you do have to do a few things. If you can put a base underneath the two stoves, you'll get some break or barrier between the cold ground and the stoves themselves, and I feel that made a huge difference this time in having those stoves not have to draw or cool off from the ground below. Put some kind of a plate underneath the Lixada stove, and it just makes that a little bit better yet, giving a little bit more insulation, a little bit more of a barrier from the cold below. A windbreak I think was helpful in this case. I did put a windbreak up so that they weren't too negatively affected by the stiff breeze we have going here. Dry wood, always. Dry wood, small wood, dry. Loading it at the beginning for a top-down feed, I think it gave an advantage in the get-go, but once that top-down feed starts to burn down and you're adding additional wood to it, I think you've lost any advantage the original top-down feed gives you. So start from a fire in the bottom, start from a fire on top. I think either way will work, and it's just a matter of personal preference there. So again, both stoves have worked very well for me today, much better than they did the last time, and I attribute that to those extra steps I took to ensure to get the most out of the two stoves, and I can recommend either of them. Again, they're small wood stoves. They take a lot of dry, small twigs to be effective, and you have to pay attention to them because they will burn down. So, I think that's all for this video, and I just encourage you, early spring, still snow on the ground, but it's still beautiful out here. Get out and explore. Take that path less traveled. It'll make all the difference. Bye for now.